My wife's betrayal wasn't just an affair. It was a masterclass in deception. But what she didn't know, I had a plan to destroy everything she built. You won't believe how it ends. Hi everyone. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. My name's Derek, and I've been married to Amber for 6 years. Until recently, I thought we had the perfect partnership. We worked hard, traveled, and laughed together. Amber has this magnetic energy that could light up any room. She's confident, sharp, and always seemed to have my back. But over the past year, something changed, and I can't ignore it anymore. At first, it was subtle. She started staying out late for work events. Amber works in PR, so late nights weren't unusual, but she started becoming evasive about details. Just boring client stuff, she'd say with a wave of her hand. Her phone, which she used to leave lying around, suddenly became an extension of her body. Always locked, always face down. Then came the spending. Amber has always enjoyed nice things, but this was different. Luxury handbags, designer shoes, and jewelry appeared without explanation. When I asked her about it, she said they were perks of the job or gifts from grateful clients. I wanted to believe her, but something didn't sit right. The tipping point was her behavior toward Claire, her best friend of nearly a decade. Claire has always been a bit of a wild card, but their bond was unshakable. Lately, though, their interactions felt off. They whispered in corners, stopped conversations when I walked in, and exchanged these looks I couldn't decipher. It wasn't just me who noticed. My brother, Mike, pointed it out during a family dinner. Amber and Claire are glued at the hip, he said with a smirk. You sure they're not hiding something? I laughed it off, but it planted a seed in my mind. Were they hiding something? The doubt grew stronger when I found an envelope hidden in the glove compartment of Amber's car. Inside was a receipt for a $15,000 deposit at a high-end jewelry store. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. It was Claire's. What the hell is this? I muttered to myself, gripping the receipt as the weight of suspicion settled in my chest. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I decided to wait, watch, and gather more. After finding the receipt, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Amber had always been good with money, practical even, but a $15,000 deposit for Claire? It didn't add up. Couldn't let it go. The next morning, as Amber hummed in the kitchen making her usual avocado toast, I casually asked, Hey, what's Claire been up to lately? Haven't seen her around as much. Amber froze for a split second, so brief you'd miss it if you weren't looking. Oh, you know Claire, she said, her voice overly light. Busy with work and, some personal stuff. Personal stuff? I pressed, trying to keep my tone casual. She shrugged. Nothing major. She mentioned something about redecorating her apartment. You know how she loves her projects. I nodded, but her answer didn't sit right. Claire wasn't exactly the redecorating type. She was more of a live out-of-chaos person. That day, I decided to dig deeper. Amber had been using her work laptop more often at home, leaving her personal one in the office. When she stepped out to run errands, I took my chance. I knew it wasn't exactly ethical, but my gut told me something wasn't right. The laptop was password protected, of course, but I knew Amber well enough to guess it. Her favorite dog's name and her birth year. It worked. Her emails were the first place I looked, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then I opened her cloud storage and saw a folder titled Invoices. Inside were photos of receipts, transfer confirmations, and, strangely, a series of documents marked NDAs. One of the NDAs caught my eye immediately. It was signed by a man named William Hart, a name I didn't recognize. The document stated that William had agreed to keep their arrangement confidential. My blood ran cold. I clicked through more files and found pictures of Amber and Claire, dressed to the nines, sitting beside a man I assumed was William. They were in what looked like a private suite, champagne flutes in hand, and Amber was leaning close to him, her expression playful. The dates on the photos coincided with several of her work events. As I stared at the screen, a realization hit me like a truck. Amber and Claire weren't just best friends. They were partners in something twisted, something that involved this William guy. But what exactly were they doing? I needed answers, and I was going to get them. The discovery of the NDA and the photos haunted me. Who was William Hart? And what kind of arrangement needed confidentiality? My heart raced as I pieced together the bits of information I'd found. Amber and Claire were clearly involved in something together, and it wasn't innocent. I decided to start with William. A quick Google search revealed he was a wealthy businessman in his mid-50s, known for his extravagant lifestyle and frequent appearances at high society events. His name popped up in articles about charity galas and corporate acquisitions. There was no mention of Amber or Claire, but his Instagram told a different story. Scrolling through his profile, I found the same photos I'd seen in Amber's cloud folder. Amber, Claire, and William together, captioned with phrases like unforgettable evenings and the best company. My stomach churned. Amber had always dismissed social media as vain and unnecessary. So why was she suddenly cozying up to a man who lived for public attention? Later that evening, Amber came home from dinner with clients. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, paired with diamond earrings that looked new. "You look nice," I said, testing the waters. "Thanks," she replied, avoiding eye contact. "Just a long night."
I'm exhausted.
I noticed she didn't smell like her usual perfume. Instead, it was something heavier, muskier. And as she leaned in to kiss me goodnight, I caught a faint whiff of alcohol and cigars. Two things she despised. "Dinner with clients, huh?" I said as casually as I could. She shot me a sharp look. "Yes, Derek. Why are you so suspicious lately?" I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Just curious. You've been out a lot." Her jaw tightened. "My job requires networking. You know that. Can we not do this tonight?" I let it go, but I knew I had to act fast. The next day, I hired a private investigator. If Amber and Claire were playing some kind of game with this William guy, I needed hard evidence. A week later, the investigator called me. "You're going to want to see this," he said. When we met, he handed me a manila envelope filled with photos. The first one was of Amber and Claire walking into a luxury hotel arm in arm. The next was of the two of them stepping out of a limousine, accompanied by William. There were more photos, all showing them together at fancy restaurants, private lounges, and even a yacht party. But the final photo hit me like a sledgehammer. It was a candid shot of Amber and Claire, sitting close to William in what looked like an intimate setting. Amber's hand was resting on his thigh, while Claire whispered something in his ear. "They're not just hanging out," the investigator said. "This looks like a well-orchestrated con. Your wife and her friend seem to be exploiting this guy, probably for money or gifts." My hands clenched into fists as I stared at the evidence. Amber wasn't just betraying me. She was scheming with her best friend to bleed a man dry. I didn't know what hurt more: the betrayal, the lies, or the fact that she thought I was too blind to see it. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let this slide. Armed with the photos and evidence from the investigator, I decided it was time to confront Amber. I couldn't stomach another evening of her fake smiles and flimsy excuses. That night, I waited for her to come home. She arrived late, as usual, looking polished and composed, but I could see the faint flush in her cheeks, the same one she always had after drinking. "Hey, Derek," she said, tossing her purse on the counter. "Sorry I'm late. Meetings ran over." "Sit down," I said, my voice steady but firm. She blinked, caught off guard by my tone. "What's going on?" "Sit," I repeated, pointing to the couch. Amber hesitated before complying. She crossed her legs and tilted her head, feigning innocence. "You're being dramatic," she said with a nervous laugh. "What's this about?" I pulled the envelope from behind me and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Why don't you tell me?" Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to me. "What is this? Open it." She reached for the envelope, her movements slow and deliberate. When she pulled out the photos, her face went pale. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them, her carefully crafted mask slipping with each passing second. "Care to explain?" I asked, crossing my arms. Amber looked up at me, her eyes wide and searching for an angle. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered. I laughed bitterly. Of course it isn't. It never is, right? So enlighten me. What exactly am I looking at? You and Claire cozying up to a rich guy for what? Money? Jewelry? Or is it something worse? She swallowed hard, her composure crumbling. Derek, I swear, it's not like that. Claire and I. Don't you dare blame this on Claire. I snapped, my voice rising. She's in on it, sure. But this is you. You've been lying to my face for months. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't buying the act. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, her voice breaking. It started as a way to help Claire. She was in a tough spot, and William, he's lonely and— Stop, I said, cutting her off. Do you hear yourself? You're justifying seducing a man for money and dragging me into your mess. Do you even care how this makes me feel? Amber's tears spilled over, but her silence spoke volumes. I leaned in, my voice cold. Here's the thing, Amber. I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to let you play me anymore. You've been lying, scheming, and using me as your cover while you and Claire run your little con. But that stops now. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Save it. I don't want your excuses. You've said enough. I'll figure out what to do next. But let me be clear, you're not walking away from this unscathed. Amber stared at me, her tears drying as a flicker of anger crossed her face. You don't understand, she said, her tone hardening. You think you know everything, but you don't. Then tell me, I challenged. She hesitated, then shook her head. You'll never understand. I stood up, disgusted. You're right, Amber. I'll never understand how someone could be so selfish and deceitful. Enjoy the house tonight. I need some air. As I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, I knew this was far from over. Amber had secrets, and I was going to uncover every last one of them. The confrontation left me furious, but also unsatisfied. Amber's vague deflection hinted that there was more to the story than what I'd uncovered. She was hiding something bigger, and I needed to know what. The following day, I reached out to the private investigator again. I need you to dig deeper, I said. There's something she's not telling me. What are you looking for? He asked. Anything, financial records, communication, transactions. I want to know how far this goes and how much damage she's done. A few days later, I received a call. We found something interesting, the investigator said. It looks like your wife and Claire set up a joint account under Claire's name. There have been large transfers from William Hart into that account over the past 6 months. My blood boiled as he continued. They've withdrawn most of it in cash. But here's the kicker, there's a paper trail leading to a few luxury purchases. A car, high-end furniture, and a condo lease. Guess whose name the lease is under? I didn't have to guess. Claire's, I said bitterly. Bingo. But it looks like your wife spends a lot of time there. Could be worth checking out. When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall. It was bad enough that Amber was siphoning money from William, but now I realized she and Claire were using it to bankroll an entirely separate life. One I wasn't part of. That evening, I confronted her again. This time, I wasn't playing around. I know about the condo, I said as soon as she walked through the door. Amber froze, her keys slipping from her hand. What are you talking about? The condo you and Claire leased with William's money. The one you've been sneaking off to while I sit here like an idiot, thinking you're out working. Her face flushed, but she tried to stay calm. You've been spying on me? Don't turn this on me, I snapped. You've been lying, cheating, and stealing. Do you even realize how deep you've dug yourself? Amber's jaw tightened. I did it for us, she said, her voice trembling. Do you know how hard it is to keep up appearances? To live up to everyone's expectations? William was just an opportunity. An opportunity? I said, my voice rising. You mean an easy target to exploit. And don't you dare say this was for us. This was for you, and maybe Claire. She flinched at the mention of Claire, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, maybe guilt. You don't know the whole story, she said finally, her voice low. Then tell me, I demanded. She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. Claire was in debt, serious debt. She came to me desperate. William was already in her orbit, and she had this idea. I just wanted to help her. I didn't mean for it to spiral like this. Her explanation sounded rehearsed, hollow. And what about you? I pressed. Don't act like you didn't benefit from this. The jewelry, the clothes, the lifestyle. Don't tell me that was all for Claire. She didn't answer, her silence confirming what I already knew. I stepped closer, my voice cold. This isn't just about some rich guy you scammed. This is about trust, Amber. You destroyed it, ours, his, and probably Claire's too. And trust me, I'm going to make sure you face the consequences. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. What are you going to do? You'll find out, I said, turning on my heel and walking away. As I left, I felt a grim determination settle over me. Amber thought she could outsmart me, but she was wrong. She had burned every bridge, and I was going to make sure she didn't escape the wreckage unscathed. Amber's lies were unraveling fast, but I needed to see the full extent of her deception with my own eyes. The investigator had given me the condo's address, and I decided to pay it a visit. If Amber and Claire were using it as their secret hideaway, there was no telling what I'd find. The building was upscale, far removed from the modest life Amber and I had built together. As I approached the concierge desk, I hesitated, wondering if I'd even get past the front door. But luck was on my side. I'm here to pick something up for Claire, I said casually, using the investigator's intel to bluff my way through. The concierge nodded, not bothering to check my story, and buzzed me in. I stepped into the elevator, my stomach churning as I ascended to the penthouse floor. The moment I unlocked the door with the spare key I'd swiped from Amber's purse, I was hit with the smell of expensive perfume and luxury candles. The space was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, and art pieces that screamed new money. On the counter, I spotted an open bottle of champagne and 2 half-full glasses. A chill ran down my spine. I moved further into the condo, my eyes scanning for anything that might confirm my suspicions. In the bedroom, I found exactly what I'd feared. Photos of Amber and Claire with William, posed as if they were the perfect little trio. One photo even had Amber's lipstick print on William's cheek. But the real bombshell was a document I found in a drawer. A financial ledger. It detailed the money William had funneled to their joint account, as well as Amber and Claire's extravagant spending habits. Everything was listed, from luxury handbags to first-class plane tickets. I took pictures of the ledger and the photos, my anger bubbling with each click of my phone's camera. As I was about to leave, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. My heart pounded as the door opened, and I ducked into the bathroom, leaving the door slightly ajar. Amber's voice echoed through the condo. Claire, hurry up. We don't have all day. Claire's voice followed. Relax. William won't even notice the money's gone until we're long gone. You're too tense. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were openly discussing their scheme, no shame, no remorse. Amber sighed. I just need this to go smoothly. Derek's been asking too many questions lately. He's starting to put things together. Claire laughed. Derek? Please. He's harmless. Even if he suspects something, he won't do anything about it. I clenched my fists, anger coursing through me. I wanted to burst out and confront them right then and there, but I held back. This wasn't the time. I needed more leverage before I struck. I waited until they moved into another room before slipping out of the condo, my head spinning with the weight of what I just witnessed. Amber and Claire weren't just liars. They were calculated, ruthless, and completely unrepentant. As I walked back to my car, I knew one thing for certain. Their little empire was about to come crashing down, and I was going to be the one to pull the rug out from under them. Driving away from the condo, I felt a surge of cold fury. Amber and Claire weren't just deceiving me. They were mocking me, treating me as an unwitting pawn in their twisted scheme. But if they thought I was harmless, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The evidence I'd gathered so far, the financial ledger, the photos, and now the damning conversation I overheard, was enough to expose their entire operation. But exposing them wasn't enough. I wanted to make them feel the full weight of their betrayal. The first step was to strengthen my case. I sent the photos and recordings to my private investigator and asked him to dig into William Hart's background. I need to know if he has any vulnerabilities, I said. Something I can use to get him on my side. Next, I reached out to an attorney, someone who specialized in cases involving financial fraud and marital disputes. I explained the situation, providing him with the evidence I had. You have a strong case, the attorney said. With this much documentation, you could file for divorce and walk away with a significant portion of your shared assets. But what about William? Does he know what's going on? Not yet, I admitted. But I have a feeling he'll be very interested in hearing about it. The attorney nodded. If you can get him to cooperate, it'll strengthen your position even more. The courts won't look kindly on Amber using marital resources to fund a con, especially if the victim is willing to testify. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with scenarios. Confronting Amber, exposing her to William, and the fallout that would inevitably follow. But I didn't want to rush into anything. This needed to be methodical, calculated. The next day, I decided to meet William myself. I arranged a casual meeting by approaching him at a hotel bar where he was known to frequent. He was exactly as I'd imagined. Charming, confident, and oblivious to the storm brewing around him. "Mr. Hart?" I said, extending my hand.
I'm Derek.
He looked puzzled but shook my hand. "Do I know you?" "No," I said, taking a seat beside him. "But I know about you, and I think we have something in common." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? And what might that be?" I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Amber and Claire." His expression darkened immediately, his jaw tightening. "What about them?" "They've been playing both of us," I said, sliding my phone across the bar to show him the photos and financial records. "I'm her husband, and you're her mark." William stared at the screen, his face a mix of shock and anger. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice low but furious. "It's the truth," I said. "They've been siphoning money from you, using it to fund a separate life. I thought you deserved to know." For a moment, he was silent, his hands clenching into fists. Then he looked up at me, his eyes blazing. "What do you want from me?" "I want justice," I said. "And I think you do too." William's face hardened as he scrolled through the photos. "She told me she was in love with me," he muttered, more to himself than to me. I kept my tone steady. "She's been saying the same thing to me for years. She and Claire have been running this scam for months, maybe longer. They've used you and they've betrayed me." He slammed the phone down on the bar, drawing a few curious glances from nearby patrons. "I won't let them get away with this," he growled. "Good," I said, "because I have a plan, and I think you'll want in." William leaned in, his voice low and deadly. "What's the plan?" I outlined it quickly. Expose Amber and Claire publicly, cut off their resources, and ensure they couldn't spin the story to their advantage. With William's influence and my evidence, we could ruin their reputations and ensure they faced legal consequences. "I'll handle the financial side," William said. "Freeze the account, report the fraud. Let's see how they explain that." "And I'll take care of the personal fallout," I replied. "Amber won't know what hit her." We shook hands, sealing our uneasy alliance. True to his word, William acted quickly. Within 24 hours, he froze the joint account Amber and Claire had been siphoning money into. He also filed a fraud report, attaching the evidence I provided. I followed suit by serving Amber with divorce papers. The shock on her face when she opened the envelope was almost satisfying enough. Almost. "What the hell is this?" she spat, waving the papers. "This is your life unraveling," I said coldly. "And it's only the beginning." The fallout hit Claire hard. William's frozen account left her unable to pay for the condo or her mounting debts. When Amber called her, desperate for help, Claire's panic turned to fury. "You promised me this would work," Claire shouted during the call, her voice trembling. Amber tried to calm her, but the cracks in their partnership were clear. I listened from the next room, recording every word. Their alliance was crumbling, and I was ready to exploit it. With everything in place, William and I made our move. He leaked the photos, financial records, and details of the con to a few well-connected journalists. Within days, the story was everywhere. Amber and Claire exposed as manipulative frauds. Their faces were plastered across social media and news outlets. William's statement painted himself as a victim, gaining public sympathy, while Amber and Claire became pariahs. Amber's calls to me became frantic, but I didn't answer. The silence spoke volumes. Desperation drove Claire to betrayal. She filed her own statement, pinning the entire scheme on Amber, claiming she'd been coerced into participating. Amber, blindsided, called me in tears. "Claire's lying," she sobbed. "You have to help me, Derek. Please." I stayed calm. "You made your choices, Amber. Now you get to live with them." Her sobs turned to anger, but it didn't matter. Their alliance was shattered, and I was just getting started. William's fraud report triggered an investigation, and both Amber and Claire found themselves facing legal action. The financial records I provided sealed their fate. Amber's lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, but the evidence was undeniable. Claire, in a bid to save herself, cooperated fully with authorities, throwing Amber under the bus. Amber was left isolated, her world crumbling. My divorce proceedings moved swiftly, ensuring I walked away with everything, and she walked away with nothing. With Amber's reputation destroyed, her finances frozen, and Claire's betrayal public, I delivered the final blow. I sent her a recording of her conversation with Claire, the one I'd captured during their meltdown. "Thought you should hear what loyalty sounds like," I wrote in the email. Amber didn't respond, but I didn't need her to. She had lost everything. Her partner in crime, her lifestyle, and the public's sympathy. As for me, I felt free for the first time in years. Amber's lies had consumed me, but now I had my life back. My advice to anyone in my position? Trust your instincts. And when betrayal comes knocking, don't just walk away. Make sure they regret every step.